So, I debated for a long time whether to send this in. I've been watching this channel for a while now, and I figured maybe if I tell someone it'll stop feeling so heavy. Because honestly, I still don't fully understand what happened to me, and I need someone to tell me I'm not crazy. This happened last February, Valentine's Day, and I haven't been the same since. I just moved into this apartment in October. It was one of those old brick buildings in the kind of neighborhood that's up and coming, which really just means it's cheap enough for someone like me. 4th floor, no elevator. The hallway always smelled like someone was cooking something with way too much cumin. But the apartment itself was nice. Hardwood floors, big windows, decent water pressure. I was happy there. I want you to understand that. I was genuinely happy. I'd gotten out of a pretty rough relationship about 3 months before the move. My ex, Rachel, well, that's a different story. Let's just say I needed a fresh start, and this apartment was exactly that. I didn't know anyone in the building. I liked it that way. I'd nod at the old woman on the 2nd floor, say hi to the guy who always seemed to be fixing his bike in the lobby. That was the extent of my social life in that building, and I was completely fine with it. February 14th. I remember I got home from work around 6:30. It was freezing outside, that kind of cold where your face hurts. I climbed the 4 flights, unlocked my door, and almost stepped on it. A red envelope, lying right there on the hardwood, just inside my door, like someone had slid it underneath. I picked it up. No name on the outside, just a red envelope, the kind you'd buy at a drugstore with a little heart embossed in the corner. I figured maybe it was from the building management. You know, one of those generic, Happy Valentine's Day from your friends at whatever property group things. I almost tossed it on the counter and forgot about it. But I opened it. Inside was a card, white, with a hand-drawn heart on the front. Not printed, hand-drawn, in red ink. And inside, in really neat handwriting, it said, "I watch you sleep. You look so peaceful. Happy Valentine's Day." No signature, no name, nothing else. I stood there for probably a full minute, just staring at it. My first thought was that it was a joke. Maybe someone in the building had a weird sense of humor. Maybe it was meant for someone else and got slid under the wrong door. I actually laughed a little. Nervous laugh, but still. I put it on the kitchen counter and made dinner. But here's the thing. I couldn't stop looking at it. Every time I walked past the counter, my eyes went right to it. "I watch you sleep." It's one of those phrases that sounds almost romantic in a movie, right? But reading it in your own apartment alone, knowing you didn't give anyone your address, it hits different. That night, I locked my door. I always locked my door, but this time I checked it, twice. I also checked the windows, which was kind of pointless because I was on the 4th floor and there's no fire escape on my side of the building. Everything was locked. Everything was fine. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I went to bed around 11, couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about the handwriting, how neat it was, how deliberate each letter looked. Whoever wrote it took their time. This wasn't something someone scribbled in 2 seconds. They sat down and carefully wrote those words. That bothered me more than the words themselves, somehow. I finally fell asleep around 1. And I slept fine. No weird noises, no nightmares. I woke up the next morning feeling a little dumb about the whole thing. In the daylight, it felt silly. A prank, a wrong door, whatever. I got ready for work, grabbed my keys, and opened the front door. There was another envelope, same red envelope, same embossed heart. But this one was different. This one had my name on it, my full name, first and last, written in the same neat handwriting. I didn't open it in the hallway. I went back inside, closed the door, locked it. My hands were doing this thing where they weren't quite shaking, but they weren't steady either. I opened the envelope. Same white card, same hand-drawn heart. Inside it said, "You fell asleep at 1:07. I counted your breaths, 14 per minute. You're healthy. That makes me happy." I want you to really sit with that for a second. Someone knew exactly what time I fell asleep. They knew my breathing rate. That means someone was either in my apartment or close enough to monitor me while I slept. On the 4th floor, with the door locked, with the windows locked. I called the building manager, guy named Doug, nice enough, kind of useless. I told him someone was leaving weird notes under my door and asked if the building had security cameras. He said there was one camera in the lobby, that's it, nothing on the floors. He said he'd look into it, which we both knew meant he'd do absolutely nothing. I went to work, couldn't focus on anything. Kept pulling up the photos I'd taken of both cards on my phone, zooming in on the handwriting, looking for, I don't know what, clues. I even Googled someone leaving notes under my door and got a bunch of Reddit threads that were either clearly fake or not really the same situation. When I got home that night, I checked the hallway before going to my door. Nothing on the floor outside. I went in, looked around the apartment. Everything was exactly where I left it. I made sure. See, I'd started doing this thing before I left for work that morning. I put a piece of tape on the inside of the front door, connecting the door to the frame. If someone opened the door while I was gone, the tape would break. The tape was intact. Nobody had come in through the front door. I bought a cheap security camera, one of those ones you can watch from your phone. I set it up in the hallway, pointed at my front door, and I set one up inside the apartment, in the living room, facing the door. If someone was sliding cards under my door, I was going to see them. That night, I barely slept. I kept checking the camera app on my phone. The hallway was empty. My living room was empty. At around 3 a.m., I finally passed out. When I woke up, the first thing I did was check the cameras. I scrubbed through the whole night on the hallway camera. Nobody, not a single person walked past my door between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Nothing. The indoor camera showed the same thing. Empty apartment. No movement except me getting up to use the bathroom at 4:15. I felt relieved. Maybe it was over. Maybe it was a 2-day thing, and whoever it was had moved on. I got dressed, feeling almost normal. Walked to the kitchen to make coffee, and stopped. There was a red envelope on the kitchen table, sitting right in the middle, perfectly centered, like someone had placed it there with a ruler. On the kitchen table, inside my locked apartment that nobody had entered, my legs went weak, actually weak, like I had to grab the counter. I stared at it for I don't know how long. Then I made myself open it. Same card, same heart. This one said, "The cameras were a sweet idea, but you can't watch what you can't see. I've been here longer than you." They knew about the cameras. They were in my apartment, but the cameras showed nothing. I grabbed my phone and scrubbed through the footage again, frame by frame. The indoor camera had a clear view of the kitchen table. At 2:22 a.m., the table was empty. At 2:23 a.m., the envelope was there. 1 minute, no movement, no shadow, no person. It just appeared. I packed a bag. I didn't think about it, I just did it. Grabbed clothes, my laptop, chargers, and I left. I stayed at a friend's place for 3 days. I told him I had a plumbing issue. I didn't tell him about the cards because how do you tell someone that? How do you explain it without sounding completely unhinged? On the 3rd day, I went back. I had to. My lease wasn't up for months and I couldn't afford to break it. I'd convinced myself that maybe there was a rational explanation. Hidden door, crawl space, something. So I searched. I searched every inch of that apartment. I tapped on walls, listening for hollow spots. I moved furniture. I checked inside closets, behind the water heater, under the bathroom sink, and then I found it. In the bedroom closet, behind the back wall, there was a seam, not obvious at all. You'd never notice it unless you were running your fingers along every surface, which is exactly what I was doing. I pushed on it, and the panel shifted. Just a little. enough for me to get my fingers behind it and pull. Behind the wall was a space, not big, maybe 4 feet wide, 6 feet deep, and just tall enough to stand in. It ran between my apartment and the one next door, and it was lived in. That's the only way I can describe it. There was a sleeping bag on the floor, a plastic bucket in the corner, empty water bottles, granola bar wrappers, a flashlight, and on the wall, taped up like decorations, were dozens of cards. Red envelopes, white cards with hand-drawn hearts. Dozens of them. Some were addressed to me. Some had other names, names I didn't recognize. And at the bottom of each one was a date. The oldest one I could find was from 2011. 2011, 14 years before I moved in. I want to describe to you what it feels like to stand in a space where someone has been secretly living, watching you through a wall. It's not just fear. It's this deep, sickening violation. Like every private moment you thought you had was shared with someone you never knew existed. Every time I changed clothes, every phone call, every time I talked to myself like an idiot while cooking dinner, someone was right there, inches away, breathing on the other side of the drywall. I called the police. They came. They looked at the space. They took photos. They were, honestly, they seemed kind of shocked too. One of the officers, younger guy, he looked at the cards on the wall and just said, "Jesus." They dusted for prints. They took the sleeping bag and the bottles for DNA. They talked to Doug, the building manager, who swore he had no idea the space existed. The police checked with previous tenants, or they tried to. Most had moved and couldn't be reached. But they found one woman, lived in my unit in 2016, who told them she'd left after 3 months because she kept finding Valentine's cards in weird places, in her kitchen drawers, under her pillow. She thought her ex was somehow getting in. She never found the panel. They never caught anyone. The DNA came back with no match in the system. The fingerprints were mostly mine and the previous tenants. Whoever was living in that space was careful. The police said it looked like the person would come and go through a vent system that connected to the basement. They found scrape marks consistent with someone crawling through the building's old ductwork. I broke my lease. I didn't care what it cost. I moved out 2 days later. I'm in a new place now. Modern building, no weird spaces, no old ductwork. I sleep with the lights on sometimes. I still check behind closet walls. I probably always will. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night more than anything else. When I was packing up to leave, I did one last look through the hidden space. I wanted to make sure the police hadn't missed anything, and in the corner, under the sleeping bag, I found one more card. It wasn't in an envelope. It was just the white card with the heart. And inside, in that same perfect handwriting, it said, "I'm going to miss you, but I'll find you again. I always do." I moved 400 miles away. New city, new state, new apartment. Last week, I found a red envelope on my kitchen counter. I don't know what to do anymore, and that's why I'm sending this to you. Because if something happens to me, at least someone will know the story.